Hello, everyone. I'm very happy that we have another speaker over here coming from Hungary called Attila Szantner, working on a very, very fascinating and interesting project. Basically, if I understand correctly, working on mini games within big AAA games that help solve scientific problems by using the players of the games to do, not really sure what, but probably we will find out more about that in the presentation. I think it's a super interesting concept when we talk about educational aspects of games or scientific collaborations with gamers. Maybe this is something that should be explored a bit more. I'm very happy that Attila is someone who's doing this. And maybe if you're a game developer and something like this is also interesting for you, I think there will be an opportunity to talk to you afterwards maybe, and maybe there can be some new collaborations also coming out of meeting Attila at Game Days. So thank you very much for coming, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. So what you see here is a good old physically existing massive arcade machine, which my guess would be that has been topic of video game conferences a long time ago, if ever. But believe me, this one is actually highly relevant even in 2023. This machine is now in Switzerland. It was on exhibition at the Museum of Gestaltung at the University of Arts at a game design exhibition. And the machine itself was manufactured by a US company. There is something like 10 of them. And this US company creates props for major Hollywood productions. One of those was the Star Wars series, The Mandalorian. So you can imagine the fine craftsmanship that went into this machine. But for us, what's most important and interesting about this is that this machine was actually born in the virtual world. And I'll show you the original one. So this one can be found on Sanctuary 3 in Borderlands 3. So if you go to the medic bay, you will find this arcade machine there. And just to give you an idea of how beautifully it was remade, I'll switch it there and back for you to see the small, even the small details were recreated. So today I'm going to talk about how this arcade machine ended up in Sanctuary 3 in Borderlands, and why I believe that it is of utmost importance for all of us in the gaming industry. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Massively Multiplayer Online Science. I'm also holding an academic position at McGill University. And though I'm talking about science today, I'm not originally coming from academia, and my background is in software development. And also, ever since I was a child, I was playing video games. This was my first next-gen console. It did crazy stuff. And I think it's quite interesting that already me, who is probably one of the oldest in this room, already I was growing up with video games. And this was this couple of decades watching how video games became something from what was considered more or less a pointless, nerdy pastime, mostly targeting young boys, to something which became the most important and exciting form of entertainment of today, engaging now over 3 billion people, was quite fascinating. I think it's not a far-fetched prediction to say that as it happened with films, it will happen with games, that soon it will be impossible to find people who are not interacting with something in some way, shape or form that we consider as a video game. So if that is true, and we accept how important role games already play in our lives and in our current societies, I would argue that it's really high time that we put a lot of time and energy and brain power into finding ways so that games could manifest this potential to act as a force for good in our lives and for the broader society as well. And don't misunderstand me, I'm not talking about serious games now, I'm talking about like games, proper entertainment. Now, the other topic that I'm talking about today is citizen science. This is something that always fascinated me ever since I learned about it some 15 years ago. Citizen science is the involvement of the general public in the scientific process. And it's nothing new, it existed forever. Outsiders made substantial contributions to scientific progress always. And of course, with the advent of online technologies, it just became easier to distribute large data sets and to collect data from contributors. Oftentimes what happens is that these projects are relying on our superior pattern recognition capabilities as human beings. And some of these projects, just as examples, would be like Foldit, the protein folding mini game, where we have as humans, we have a good inspiration of how to compress these structures, and then computers have a much easier time to then calculate the energy level of the molecule. Or iWire would be another example. Where researchers are trying to analyze these images, which are slices from a mouse brain, if I remember well, and trying to reconstruct the three-dimensional structure of visual neurons in the brain. Or Philo, where when you're playing with these colorful tiles, these are representing nucleotides in DNA, and you're trying to align them in a way so that we better understand how they were mutated. Citizen science is a beautiful concept, but it suffers from two major problems, which is user acquisition and user engagement. One of the things is that for many people, it's just too repetitive and becomes quickly boring, and so they leave. And that's where our story started with massively multiplayer online science. We came up with the idea, that was our innovation in the field, that instead of trying to solve this problem ourselves, why don't we go to the masters of engagement, game developers and game designers, and take these scientific mini games and integrate them with major video games in a way that they become part of the game. So they're connected to the narrative, they're matched with the art style, with the visuals, and they also become part of the reward cycle. And so we said that we should approach game developers and ask them primarily two things. One is to help with their often decades-long know-how of how to build really engaging experiences, and also to give access to their player bases of millions and sometimes tens of millions. Now, I had no prior connection to the game industry, but I felt that it's just too important to let it go, so I started to try to contact people, and one of the companies that was seemed to be, or one of the games that seemed to be like a perfect fit was EVE Online, which is developed by an Icelandic company, CCP. And luckily, they were super receptive to the idea. Now, it was not obvious to pull off such a collaboration, partly because nobody has ever done it before. So it contained a substantial amount of risk. But we managed to find solution for all the problems, and in 2016 we launched our first collaboration together, which became known as Project Discovery inside EVE. Our scientific partner was the Human Protein Atlas. That's a Swedish research team. They're curating an open database of microscope images of human cells and tissues, and we took these mind-blowingly beautiful immunofluorescent microscope images of human cells and showed them to players. They were such a good match to EVE that the art director didn't believe that we hadn't tampered with these images. That's how they come out from the science pipeline, and they were really a perfect fit for EVE. And so we created this small minigame, which was a very simple classification minigame, where we were asked players to mark the green staining on these images, and those green stainings are marking the presence of a certain type of protein on the image. Now, there are many, many different figures and numbers and statistics about how successful it became, but one of the stories I think tells a lot. So what you see here is the Sisters of EVE combat suit. EVE game designers created set of rewards for project discovery specifically. And this was the ultimate reward. And of course, they made an estimation of how long it will take to unlock one of these. And they were counting with something like 3 to 4 weeks. The first one was unlocked 17 hours after launch, and the second one 6 minutes later. So that's when we knew that this is going to work really, really well. This was the first major publication, first major scientific publication of the project. Nature Biotechnology is not too keen on publishing fake science for obvious reasons, but they thought that they would let these non-existing spaceships to be on the front page of Nature Biotechnology because they felt the project is so important for science. It was also an amazing opportunity to do different activities together with the EVE community. So this photo was taken at FanFest, which is the annual EVE player convention in Reykjavik. And we created the first ever live citizen science tournament. And you see in lab coats, well, some EVE devs, or one EVE dev and the scientific team. You see Emma Lundberg, she's the research lead. And the red-haired guy is Hilmar, who is the CEO of EVE Online. In 2017, we switched to another project. We started to look for exoplanets with the transit method. And we introduced these graphs inside EVE. These graphs are time versus luminosity graphs. And how it works is that if a planet passes in front of a star, then it blocks a part of the light. So if you see a periodic dip in these graphs, then you may have a chance to find a planet. And so they created this interface which actually have tools that researchers use at the lab to find these transit events. And we were really humbled and lucky and happy that Michael Meyer accepted to be part of the project. Michael Meyer is the researcher who found the first exoplanet. He received the Nobel Prize 3 years ago in physics for that achievement. And I think it tells a lot that a researcher of his caliber decided that he will be part of this story. He got an avataring game. He also came to FanFest. This is the photo that was taken on his visit. This was published in Ars Technica, and I really love this one because it tells a lot about the project, of the different facets of these collaborations. On the right side, you see Michael Meyer in red pullover. And on left, that guy is the Space Pope. He is the guy who cosplays as the religious leader of EVE Online. And in real life, he is an education officer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So it really tells a lot about the different facets. These screenshots were from below the YouTube version of Michael Meyer's talk at FanFest. And if you read the comments, this is the kind of inspired comments that researchers look for when they're trying to do science engagement and science communication. And of course, we made another suite of really nice rewards for this project as well, which players really, really appreciate. Now, there's a lot of benefit that these projects bring to game companies. It being an interesting activity for gamers, or the fact that we bring massive databases which are really useful assets for the creatives at the game company, or the fact that people who are working at these companies find these projects super inspiring. So it's also very valuable from that regard. One of the things that we anticipated from the beginning that journalists and the media will be interested, and it worked much better than we thought. So this was published around when we were running the Exoplanet project. And EVE Online is a crazy game, so it's covered in journals usually, but to get an article in the New Yorker or in BBC, as it's not obvious, and this project was covered there. Just last year we had 3 documentaries about these collaborations. One of them is running on Amazon Prime, so it was really fascinating to see the genuine interest from journalists about these projects. We also got some really nice awards, so awards like the Innovation Award of the University of Geneva, or the IGDA's Community Leadership Award, or the Lavi Award, which I didn't know before, but it's a Google-backed award that prior to us, the Special Achievement Award was handed out to people like David Attenborough or the European Space Agency, and it was quite fascinating to see that the jury decided that a video game-based award is worth the merit to stand in that line. Now in 2020, we started a new project, which was in immunology. This is a data set that comes from the human blood through a technology which is called flow cytometry. And basically they're creating a large dimension or a high dimension data set, some 40, 50 dimension data set of the cells in the blood. And it's very important for researchers to be able to cluster these data sets to better understand how the immune system reacts to certain conditions, and also on the other side to see how certain treatments influence the human immune system. This was during the time when it was the first wave of COVID, so I got an email from Bergur Finnbogason, who is the creative director, and he said, is there anything that we can help? And we managed to set up this new project just in 6 weeks because everything was in place. And this is running ever since, and now we are about to publish a paper where we can actually prove that players substantially help to improve algorithms in this domain, which is quite fascinating. I thought to show you a video here. That was a short in BBC talking about the project, and the reason why I like it a lot, because there is a player who talks about why they are participating in these activities.
You look at a plot and you just draw polygons around data. You can just sit there, pull it up, and start doing it. And I think that was exciting to me, just how approachable it was. And then, secondly, and probably the more important part, is just how relevant it is to me. Like, I can finally relate to this.
It's really just like citizen science to a T. We had a giant group of people, and we made this fun. We gamified this quite a bit. There's incentives for people to do it that'll boost their game experience, but it's also just the heart and soul of our community as well. These are things that our people really enjoy, and this really is for the greater good. And that was the strength of this project in particular, where this came out when everybody in the world was at its height of being affected of this.
We're doing two things. Is one, we can, once we have this infrastructure in place, we can help the scientists by accelerating the ability to look at things they know are there. The other thing we can do is something they can't do, and that's look at all the possible things that are in the blood. And so what we can do is we can take even people who are not scientists and show them these data sets, and they can detect patterns. They've done a wonderful job in the online game to explain the technology and explain the kinds of things we're looking for, and then we just let them loose on this data.
You hear about the COVID research or COVID going on all around the world. A lot of people, have had it or know someone who's had it, and just the fact that I can sit here at my desk while I'm waiting for a fleet, doing something that's going to contribute to, helping find out information about COVID-19, that's just phenomenal that I have this opportunity just playing a video game. And I think that's really kind of what got me into it, is that I can sit at my desk in the comfort of my home and I can help researchers do something, make a difference. And that's kind of cool.
So EVE Online was can say a match made in heaven. It was a perfect fit for this activity for many, many reasons. But of course, I tried to contact other gaming companies. And one of the people that I talked to was Randy Pitchford, who is the founder and president of Gearbox. This meeting took place in, if I remember well, 2016. And immediately Randy understood the implication, as he said he wants it in one of their games. Now we had to wait for quite a long time, but we're not complaining because eventually this got into Borderlands 3. Now, where EVE was a perfect match, Borderlands 3 is typically a game that you can hardly imagine such an almost meditative activity to take place. So I took this screenshot from the teaser trailer from Borderlands 3. This is a place where it's a looter shooter. It's super quick. You need 150% of your attention to be any good, and so it was not obvious whether it's possible. But then Gearbox game designers made an amazing job, and in 2020 April we finally released Borderlands Science as a free update to Borderlands 3. And actually that's when this beautiful arcade machine appeared on Sanctuary 3. And so what happened is that on the launch day, this arcade machine appeared in the medic bay, and the new quest was marked, and so most of the players went and checked it out. And what happens is that if you go to this arcade machine and you go inside, let's say, there is a small mini game, something like a retro version of Tetris or Candy Crush, where you're manipulating small tiles. But in the meantime, you're actually playing with DNA information. And I want to show you another video here, which is the trailer specifically made for Borderlands Science. And it explains much better what it is about and how it is played.
Hey folks, this is Mayim Bialik, actor, PhD scientist, researcher, and your favorite person. Today, I'm here to talk to you about video games and science and how we can grab both by their necks and make them hiss consensually. Long story short, by playing Borderlands 3, you can contribute to real-world scientific research, as in data that helps real people in meat space. Speaking of meat, did you know that more than half the cells in our bodies are alien? Only 43% of our cells are of human origin. The rest belong to foreign microbes. These microbes have a massive impact on our body's health. The more we study microbes, the more we can learn about the accumulation of meat and existential terror that is the human body. These microbes are made up of DNA, just like us. Each microbe has its own special DNA signature, and similar species of microbes have similar DNA. If we could sequence all the different species of microbes found in the human body, which, remember, make up more than half of the cells in our body, we'd learn a ton about ourselves. To that end, the Microsetta Initiative collected tens of thousands of samples of, to use the scientific term, doo-doo. Extracted the DNA of the microbes inside and sequenced it. Now we just need to organize this data. Unfortunately, though computers excel at certain tasks like crunching numbers or tracking down specific pornography, they're not so good at organizing DNA information. See, different species of microbes have similar but not quite identical DNA. That means mapping their sequences can be kind of ambiguous. The computer makes lots of small mistakes that can corrupt downstream analysis. Which brings us back to video games. So we've got several million sequences that are each 150 nucleotides long that are riddled with small errors from the computer analysis. How can we get rid of all these errors? With your help. We've taken the millions of DNA sequences and broken them down into bite-sized puzzles that you can play and solve inside Borderlands 3. And try not to think about the fact that the DNA came from human excrement when I use phrases like bite-sized. By playing Borderlands Science inside Borderlands 3, you'll be directly helping our scientists organize and compare this dung data. The game is simple. You'll be confronted with different strands of DNA, each made up of individual tiles. It's your job to place as many of these tiles as possible in their appropriate row while matching the colors. It's not always possible to line everything up perfectly, but that's okay. By playing the game and matching the sequences, you'll also be identifying the errors in our computer analysis and helping scientists across the planet build a better algorithm for the future. And since all this research is open access, the entire scientific community will benefit from it. This research could directly lead to a universal catalog of all known microbes, which could lead to new breakthroughs in food, medicine, exercise. The sky's the limit. And it all starts with you playing a video game. But if the pursuit of knowledge isn't enough of an encouragement to sort through virtual butt microbes, then fear not. Playing Borderlands Science earns you in-game currency you can spend on booster items for your characters. Oh, and this is all totally free. Just activate the Borderlands Science machine on Sanctuary 3 and sort some gut microbes.
So this was how it made. I wanted to make a note here that these collaborations bring a lot of value for researchers. So just the fact that such a cool, concise explainer video was created around the project with a Hollywood star is something which is completely out of reach for research projects, and it was of course spearheaded by Gearbox, and it made in a way that actually our research partners are using this trailer at scientific conferences to explain what they're working about. Now, just for you to understand the implications and how substantial player contribution is, this project was set up together with not just the Microsata initiative, but with the help of McGill University. And McGill was running this citizen science project that I already mentioned in the beginning of the talk. And so what happened is that Gearbox game designers, together with researchers, took this original version of the game, and of course they made some changes. So they fit with the Borderlands aesthetic. They made some changes which made it really much more enjoyable, like introducing these tiles as a scarce resource in the game, or introducing gravity in the game. But still we have a very good comparison of how this works in a classic settings on a website and in a video game. The day we launched this minigame inside Borderlands 3, we collected 5 times more data than during the 10 years that researchers were running this project. This is the kind of power that games, game designers, and gamer communities bring to science. So the projects are working beautifully, but I have to mention a couple of challenges. Somewhat naively, when I started to work on this, I thought that I have to find one game company, one major game company, convince them, and if we manage to do a collaboration, then suddenly everybody will jump on board because it's a no-brainer. Now that didn't happen. And now I understand why. On one side, in the game industry, it's not the case that you guys are looking for extra features to implement in the games. You are super swamped. You're happy if you can deliver what you dreamed of or what you promised to your player base. So that's a very, very critical bottleneck in this project. And partly for that reason, but for other reasons as well, we cannot serve all research projects. There are many, many research projects who would benefit from these type of collaborations, but for reasons like maybe the dataset is not as big, or maybe the dataset is not that type that it would fit a game from an aesthetic point of view, we look at this project and it's clear immediately that they will never make it inside a video game. And as you can imagine, this was quite a frustrating thing during the last 10 years. So we started to think about what we can do about it. And so, very recently, 3 weeks ago, we announced this at EVE FemFest, which was the 20th anniversary of EVE Online, officially to the player base. So that's a really big commitment from everybody that in 2024, we're releasing the Play Science iOS and Android mobile app and a supporting API to it. Now, it doesn't sound that revolutionary to have a mobile app in 2023. And probably as a small company, I would never consider to start a new mobile app with more like on the serious game side. But since we have these collaborations, and in these collaborations, more than 6.5 million players already participated, it makes a lot of sense to create an app which in the first step would almost act like a companion app for EVE or Borderlands. And we would keep this connection, meaning that you would play on this app and you could still you would accrue some kind of in-game points, and that later on you can exchange to the same kind of rewards that you get in the game now. So, as I was saying, it's sort of like a mobile project discovery. But then it's much more than that. What we are doing now is this is going to, or planned to be a host for different citizen science mini-games. What it would mean is that for many game developers for whom the commitment of creating something in-game was just simply not viable, we can offer different levels of collaborations. I can imagine collaborations where a game company maybe just offers some rewards for players. Or we can imagine a collaboration where in their game there's nothing happening, but in the mobile app they can create something based on their art style and their visuals around the specific citizen science project. And I really hope that this will massively improve our reach inside the gaming industry. And because of that, we really envision this to become a new community hub for like-minded players for whom this is an interesting activity, who think that playing while doing good is not necessarily two exclusive things. And the reason why I believe in this is that during these 10 years I talked to many game developers and nobody rejected this idea. Everybody was super inspired, very enthusiastic, but for the aforementioned reasons they just couldn't commit to such a project. And finally, and this is like the big picture, we're a very small company. So if this becomes successful, we could easily become a bottleneck ourselves. We don't want that. So we are sharing the underlying API with partners in the research world so that they can develop their own solutions. This is not a technical thing. It's more like a way to be able to share this massive contributor base to help other projects like Foldit or like SciStar on the SciStarter platform or any other citizen science projects. So this is what we are planning for as a next step, and I'm very positive that we'll come out with this in 2024. Finally, I will close my talk with this slide. This was made for one of the FemFest presentations for project discovery, and it was to tell players that this whole project relies on them, begins with them and ends with them, for that matter. But I really like to use this slide at conferences because it's also true that citizen science begins with you guys, because you are the ones who can make it happen as game designers and game developers. So thanks a lot for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Attila. This is super inspiring and amazing work that you're doing. If you have any questions, you can either use our Slido for that, or just maybe raise your hand, and if I'll see you, then you can ask. Where are you?
Hey, so I have two questions. The first question that I was thinking is if the same approach is being used outside of science as well, because I can see there's some potential monetization opportunity. Just as, like, on one side you can have advertisements, right, where you have a free-to-play game, And advertisers is like third parties will just like put their adverts into the game and they will pay you as a game developer to have it there. I can say something very similar here where there may be a third party where they have some problem, like potential problem is labeling for the models, where you pay labelers to find something in a text or something of that sort. These are like real jobs that you can potentially outsource to the games, pay the game developers to like have it there, and essentially that's a way for you to get the monetization stream. I'm just wondering if something like that exists, if it's used, or potentially what was the business model that you had here with like the science outsourcing the problem to the game developers here.
So for outsourcing, there are several different types of business model. Like Amazon's Mechanical Turk is a good example where you actually pay per classification on the platform. Although I do believe that for a scientific project, it loses a lot of value on the science communication and engagement side. So it's really not the same. Not to mention that on this scale, it's simply not viable for research team. It just costs too much. You were touching a very sensitive topic from many different perspectives. One is that when I started this project, my background, I'm not an academic, so I was coming more from the entrepreneurial side, and it was clear for me from day one that this is not going to be this is not going to make me rich. But my goal was to try to find a setup where this is sustainable in the long term, meaning that we can keep up a small team who can continue to develop and innovate. Now that didn't happen either. So it's still when people ask me whether we are for profit or non-profit, I always say that we are for loss, which is a very special category in entrepreneurship. But we still heavily rely on grants and working together with our partners. There is some sort of business model, but it's largely not enough to make it sustainable yet. This will, I think, change with the mobile platform. What I believe that this is a very sensitive issue. So I remember when we started this project together with Eve, they defined some criteria what they want to apply when they're selecting a scientific project. And one of that was that it supports open data and open science. We are considering some sort of monetization, but we haven't thought about it too deeply yet. We want to push it out first to make it happen. But even if we do some monetizations, we built this project has a high prestige in the gaming industry and among the gamers of these communities. And we definitely want to do only a thing which doesn't risk that. So, for example, I had a call 2 days ago with one of the leaders of one of the big coalitions in EVE, so a player who is leading, I don't know, thousands or maybe tens of thousands of other players through alliances. And I talked to this guy. He's a really, really bright guy. And for example, I asked him whether they would be interested to be part of these conversations when we get to a point where we start to think about monetization, to find ways that are acceptable for them, for CCP, for us. So, but yes, that's a very valid question at this point.
Hi. Thank you for the talk. My question is, did you try playing with the VR, or do you know some research that would maybe benefit from the medium more than from the flat screen?
No, and it was interesting to see because, as you might know, CCP was one of the pioneers in VR. So the first Oculus was published together with Eve Valkyrie, which was their dogfight, first-person spaceship shooter game. So they were very, very committed. There's a lot of interesting projects going on. Once I visited their VR lab, and there were some really super cool experimental projects there, and they gave it up. And Hilmar said that it's still a very interesting technology. It's just the market is not ready. So, and we maybe again with PlayScience that might change, that we have possibilities to work together with smaller entities, but simply by the logic of crowdsourcing science, we need to find larger communities. So, when you analyze one of these images, you hand it out for 10, 20, 50 people, the same image, and then you do some sort of aggregation or majority voting to predict the good solution. And so we need large, massive crowds to contribute.
Hello. Regarding the potential problems that need solving like this, is there some sort of like a list or like some source where there are, for the potential developers, where they can take the ideas for the problems that they could potentially implement in their games or something like that?
So we don't have a published list. We started a developer website, but that's turned to be more used by actual partners when we were doing the implementation. But that's part of our job. So how we work is, and it's interesting because I think partly that's why we became successful, that when we approach a game company or when we see that, okay, there's interest, we sit down, we try to understand your game, and then we suggest a couple of projects which we think might fit, and then you are in the lead because you know better your game, you know better your community. It was always the case that the game developers chose the project, and we help in this process. So that's how we approach it. We continuously try to build a portfolio of projects and contact academics who might have interesting topics, but it's usually unique like iteration that we do together.
So there's a question on our Slido. Where or when will the app be available? I didn't find it on the Android App Store.
That's fair. It's not on the App Store yet. So we are planning to release it in 2024. We don't have a more precise deadline for that yet, but we announced it at FanFest. So that's a hard commitment for the EVE community.
Okay. And maybe one more question from me. You mentioned the API mostly serving the scientist part of the project. Did you maybe consider making the API open to the other side, like for game developers, maybe just going wild even without direct cooperation with you, having access to the data, being able to solve all these problems?
So
I can maybe, a follow-up thing to this is I can imagine like people actually basing their, for example, hyper-casual mobile games just on the underlying game design, so-called game designs of all the things that need to be solved.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we're talking about with a game developer who is actually working on a new IP for mostly for targeting kids, and we believe that kids would be like really good at solving these kind of puzzles. For the moment, I think we'll probably work in a way that we always set up collaboration. So we want to know who is working with us, partly because we have to be. I mentioned that we'll introduce some sort of points in the app. And those points can be exchanged in any of the games. So we have to act as a good central bank and make sure that we don't issue these kind of points just nilly-willy, but we can tell CCP or Gearbox that an appropriate amount of effort went into gaining those points, and you can be sure that when you're handing out rewards, it's not a sort of abusing the system. So I would be a bit afraid to open it up just for everybody, but definitely this possibility for other game developers to use this API as well is out there.
Would there also be a risk of somehow poisoning the data that you get back if it's just people?
Yes, yeah, that too. So we have to be sure that we keep a high standard on all these sides with our partners. And so, EVE is a very competitive game, so we know that certain corporations, which are the equivalent of, let's say, guilds in EVE, have IT departments whose sole job is to understand the network communication between the if client and server and see where are the small backdoors that they can abuse for some extra gain. So, it's a bit scary landscape to just leave it open for everybody.
True. So if there aren't any more questions, yeah, one more.
So I wanted to ask if you are looking into the aspect of your work as a gamification of the science. Like, for example, the game that you showed from Borderlands, I can see how researchers may actually enjoy playing the game more than doing the actual work. So like you can potentially like do the same aspect of making the work more fun. So even for regular researchers.
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
So I was like thinking like you are targeting the crowd of making it more enjoyable to solve the research problems. I was thinking if you are targeting also the researchers only, where you just take the problems, make it more fun, and just gamifying the science itself for the regular researchers.
I think in a way that's what we're doing. If your question is regarding whether we think about just doing standalone solutions, to be honest, I don't believe in that. So that has been tried before. That was the problem with citizen science. There were even mobile games, let's say, serious games, published by Cancer Research UK, if I remember well. But there is no engagement with those. So they lack this, let's say, this epic background, what Eve provides or Borderlands provides, and also they lack that know-how what these companies have. So they cannot compete with that level of professionalism and level quality of work that comes out from these collaborations. So I don't believe in that. What's happening, and that happened, for example, in the project of Borderlands, is that Borderlands game designers were very happy and lucky to have Philo as a serious game, and that they could talk to the research team who created that, and there was a lot of exchange of knowledge exchange during this process. But I believe that the best if these companies in the industry who really know how to make fun experiences are the ones who are designing these experiences.
Is it probably also a matter of the size of the community, not only the quality of the minigame that they create, right? Because like the user bases are super huge, millions of people.
Yeah.
Thanks for the talk. Just a quick question, like what's your advantage compared now to the AI analysis or AI used as an analysis tool, identifying certain patterns and stuff like that?
So most of the AI, how it works is that they require a large quantity, high quality human curated data. As far as I know, in many AI projects, actually that's the bottleneck. So, ChatGPT is quite amazing what they're doing, but it has already been told that, they just process the whole internet. So now they're looking for more stuff to read because that's how it can be improved. One of the very interesting thing that I learned in the Borderlands project is that that project works in a way that you have this puzzle. You're sending your setup or where you think where the alignment is the best, and then we have a scoring function. So basically, you see whether you reached a par score and then whether you made a high score. But what researchers told me that in that certain case, what they're doing now is not even the highest score is the most valuable. Of course, it's interesting. But what they're doing is that they create, if they draw up a graph of quality versus cost, if I remember well, and they draw up the Pareto front, which would be like, let's say, optimal solutions, the Pareto front for a machine is equivalent. So wherever they find a solution, it's equivalent for a machine. But what we see, if we plot the human solutions, they tend to cluster in a certain place. So what they use this data for is try to teach the machines how to get to that region, because for some reason we see much more order in that region than any other part of this space, or we, for example, tend to stop further improving the solution at a certain point because we feel that it would be just take too much energy and it's a good enough solution. And all these inputs are very important inputs from the human eye, human perception.
All right. So, Attila, thank you very much. I really hope I will see your mini games in many more AAA big titles in the following years. And best of luck with your project. It's great stuff that you're doing.
Thank you.
And some practical info for you. So we have a lunch break now. There should be some food trucks standing outside. So everybody are welcome to get some good food, maybe even talk some more. So thank you once again.